Okay, everyone, today we are going to talk about the national state and the rise of democracy. By the late 19th century, progress had made toward establishing constitutions, parliaments, and individual liberties. We were going to see the rise of new political parties and labor unions challenging the governments of Europe. We're also going to see a substantial amount of competition among countries. While democracy triumphed in Western Europe, authoritarianism prevailed in Central and Eastern Europe, as industrialization is also going to be sweeping the United States. We're also going to see a substantial amount of international rivalries that are going to set the stage for war. First place we're going to talk about is Western Europe. By the late 1800s, political democracy was spreading throughout Europe, as I already mentioned. There's going to be the rise of something called ministerial responsibility. The idea here was that more or less the prime minister is responsible to the popularly elected people, not just one person in charge and I'm going to do whatever I want. It's actually going to be that the prime minister his job is to serve the people, the commonality, the greater interest of all people. We're also going to see progress towards establishing a constitution and parliaments and individual liberties in many major European countries. By the late 19th century, we're going to see Great Britain working to establish a two-party parliament. There's going to be the liberal and conservative groups. If you guys remember, we've already talked about the differences there between the liberals and the conservatives. The liberals are going to win out. The liberals are going to be in favor of social reforms such as unemployment benefit and pensions. And what I mean, as a common person in society, you are going to be much more in favor of the liberal way of life than you would be in favor of the conservative, traditional, old way where the commoner really didn't have many rights. In France, we're going to see the election of a prime minister that is eventually going to lead to the Third Republic. This is going to be a new government that was established with a new president and a legislature that was made up of two houses. In Italy, we're going to see that Italy becomes united. We already talked about people like Giuseppe Garibaldi and the Red Shirt Army uniting Italy, but unfortunately, Italy was weak and it's still very much separate because of poverty. There was also a substantial amount of widespread government corruption that led to a weak and centralized political system. The one bright spot there, I guess, for Italy is that by 1912, there was male suffrage for all peoples. The next thing we'll talk about here is the Old Order, specifically looking at a place like Germany. The government was established by Otto von Bismarck. We already talked about him. He's the guy who practiced realpolitik. He was very much in favor of a strong military. Eventually, there is going to be set up a two-house legislature. Throughout the new legislature called the Reichstag, or German parliament, was elected by male voters. The emperor still maintained political power. He contained political power by controlling the military and foreign policy. The emperor at the time, William II, he built Germany up to be the strongest military and industrial power in Europe, and he was conservative. Basically, he was still in favor of I'm in charge and we have to follow my way. The conservative forces thwarted the rise of democracy in Germany. Essentially, it was still going to be a dictatorship. The next thing to look at is a country, Russia. Russia was very, very slow to adopt industry. What ends up happening, I mean, Russia, we've already talked about Russia here in class. They're so darn big, and because they're so darn big, the Tsar is going to be dependent on the other nobles. And if the other nobles and wealthy landlords don't adopt the new policies, they are very hard to take hold. Tsar Nicholas II is going to become the Tsar in 1894, and he was committed to not only the autocratic rule of a nation, he also wanted to focus on rapid industrialization in the 1890s. Now, we've already talked about what rapid industrialization is, but what are some of those main factors, just to kind of review? The quick building of factories produce goods. We're going to see an establishment of social classes, even further than before, because now it's going to be the wealthy landowners, it's going to be the wealthy businessmen, and then there unfortunately are going to be those people who are almost the working poor. They are making barely enough to survive. We're going to see, just like before, very poor working conditions in all the factories, and the rise of socialism and Marxist parties throughout Russia. If you guys remember, the Industrial Revolution, it took two phases throughout most all of Europe. First Industrial Revolution, Second Industrial Revolution. And over time, things got better. This rapid industrialization that takes place in Russia is going to be quite problematic, because what's going to really end up happening here is all the good and the bad are going to happen in a compressed, tighter amount of time. And so things are going to go from bad to worse, unfortunately, in Russia when it comes to the rapid industrialization, and specifically the commoners and how they were treated. And we'll talk about them a little bit further later on. Next place to go to is Austria-Hungary. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, the emperor was Francis Joseph. He largely ignored the Austrian parliament, and he kind of did what he wanted. He governed by imperial decree, saying, I'm your emperor, you have to follow what I say. We're going to see a major amount of ethnic problems threaten the stability in Austria. In Hungary, the other side of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the parliamentary system worked, although it was dominated by the nation's wealthy, the land-holding class. Now, what's going to happen here is we're going to see like the perfect storm of things begin to happen. Russia is going to struggle with imperialism, or I'm sorry, with industrialization. Austria-Hungary is going to struggle to really maintain its power. And again, looking at Russia, Russia was becoming more industrialized, and the rising working class is going to demand more political power. What's going to happen? The workers are finally going to be fed up. And at St. Petersburg, peacefully, a bunch of workers, wives, and children were going to present a petition to the Tsar saying, hey, things are really, really bad in our factories. Can you, the Tsar, the Emperor of Russia, can you please do something to make things better? Unfortunately, the soldiers guarding the palace thought this was like some kind of massive mob that was going to come and destroy the castle. The soldiers actually open up fire, obviously killing a multitude of people, not only killing people, but unarmed women and children. There's actually an excerpt in the book about these people running away and being shot in the back. Now, if you are somebody who hears of your king shooting your people who are bringing a peaceful petition, asking your king for help, how are you going to feel about that? Obviously, it's going to end. This is a favorite song of mine. A little YouTube action for you here. This song, Bloody Sunday. The workers are so angered by their mistreatment, by the way the king has reacted to them. The workers go on strike. And I'm not talking about just a couple of workers. I'm talking about all of the workers of Russia, essentially, go to a work stoppage mode. No factories can produce anything. And eventually Tsar Nicholas is going to have to relent, and he is going to say, we are going to fix this. One of the ways the Tsar is going to fix this is by establishing something called the Duma. This was like the Russian Legislative Assembly. Although what happens is he's going to limit the power of the legislative body eventually. He's going to at first say, hey, I'm sorry, my bad, let's make this right. And then within a few short years, he's going to basically cripple the Duma to the point where it can't really do much of anything. But that's a story for another time. Next thing to take a look at is going to be the crisis in the Balkans. By 1878, we are going to see that the Ottoman Empire is going to lose power. They're going to lose control over places like Greece and Serbia and Romania, as well as Montenegro, and areas in the Balkans began to gain their freedom. They started fighting for and defeating and petitioning the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire, as we talked about it last chapter, is in a constant state of decline. Ever since like the 15 and into the 16, 17, 1800s, the Ottoman Empire is going to continually get weaker and weaker and weaker. More countries are going to become more nationalistic, and they're going to want to fight for their freedom. What's going to end up happening here is, remember, we've always talked about this, when countries are in crisis, when they are fighting, when they are warring, they look weak. And Austria and Russia are going to vie for influence in the Balkan areas. Both empire is going to say, hey, they look weak, they look tasty, let's go, conquer them, take them over, and make them do our bidding. This is going to lead to some major problems. Austria-Hungary is going to kind of get there first, if you will. They decide we are going to officially annex, that means to absorb or to take over, Bosnia and Herzegovina. More or less, they are incorporating territory into their existing political unit. This is going to anger another one of those newly independent countries, Serbia. Serbia had always had this idea of creating a Slavic state or a Slavic kingdom. This Slavic state or Slavic kingdom was going to be for all the people in Europe, that they could come, they could live there, and it would be essentially a little oasis of the Slavic-speaking people sharing the same culture, religion, heritage, background, language. It's just more or less all those people wanted to be in one specific area. What I'm talking about here, nationalism. Both Bosnia-Herzegovina and Serbia, they were all part of that Slavic-speaking nations, and they felt a direct connection. Bosnia and Herzegovina were not connected at all to Austria and Hungary, other than they were relatively close to each other. They did not share culture, heritage, background, no nationalistic ties. And yet, Austria-Hungary is the one that says, well, we're going to take you over. This is going to lead to some major steps to war. Russia is going to be a country that is going to support Serbia. We're going to talk a lot about this here coming up, guys. Russia views itself as like the big brother for all the Slavic-speaking nations. And by the beginning of 1914, the crisis in the Balkans is going to threaten the security of Europe. Serbia has its new ally in Russia, and we've talked about it before. Russia is massive. They have more bodies to throw at a country during a war because they are just their sheer size. And they begin to prepare for war against Austria-Hungary. And it's going to establish a full-out system of alliances. We're going to see two lines drawn in the sand. We're going to pick teams. Germany is going to align with Austria-Hungary. Why? Because Germany has cultural heritage, language, and background nationalist ties to Austria-Hungary. Not only that, Germany has developed a massive war machine, and just like a kid after Christmas, they want to play with their toys. The other system of alliances is going to be Serbia and Russia. Again, Russia now viewing themselves as the protector of all the Slavic-speaking people. So we're going to see Austria-Hungary, Serbia, they're small peanuts right now. It's going to be the big fight between Germany and Russia. What's going on in Germany at this point in time? Otto von Bismarck is going to work to keep Germany from becoming a democracy. Bismarck wants Germany to become essentially autocratic by rule, even if it's not him, that it would be the Tsar. Germany had built up the strongest military and industrial nation in Europe by far. These wealthy industrialists wanted to expand abroad to increase profits and to keep people from wanting democracy. More or less, a happy person didn't want change. If people were working and happy under a king, they'd be fine. It's not normally until people are miserable and mad and poor and hungry that they say, we need a change. We want this king out of here. By 1890, Emperor William II fired Otto von Bismarck and took control of Germany's foreign policy. William ended the treaty with Germany had with Russia, and this is when it starts to happen. This is when all these kind of land grabs begin to take place. And we're going to see the establishment of some international rivalries. We're going to see, boom, in 1882, this big triple alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy forming against what will become known as the Triple Entente. In 1907, the Triple Entente is formed as a direct retaliation to Germany and Austria-Hungary, really building up their armies. The countries of Great Britain, France, and Russia realize, okay, Germany means business, and they have to prepare for war. What is so interesting about this is that these international rivalries, this whole more or less picking sides and drawing up teams, is going to lead to World War I.